with that, let's welcome Scott Brinks.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know how well the sound will come out. My apologies for that, but this is the voice the good Lord left me with after a stage 4 head and neck cancer. So I'm a cancer survivor. I've been around now 7 years, and this is how it works out. I'd like to talk today about what I've seen for the last 4 or 5 years from a supply chain perspective about going back to the future. I've heard a lot today about thinking, and I've heard a lot today about design. Well, when I look at what I do for a living, I do solution design. But I do solution design as it relates to supply chain, moving everything that you all talk about designing. The problem is, I get it after you're done. I get it after you're done, or you think you're done. And then I try to optimize what you think you have finished. And in many times, a great deal of time and expense is spent in reverse engineering and reconstructing what you thought you did. Okay? And when you want to talk about greening things, you want to talk about the waste involved in that process, it's relatively significant. But let me talk about the things that kind of wrap in a package all of this stuff we've been working on. I don't want you to think out of the box here. What I want you to do is get out of the box. Throw it away. Put away. I come to CoFest to meet lots of very smart people who do things completely off the planet of things I understand. So that I can pick a few things from what I don't understand and bring it to the planet I do. So what's my bias? I'm a systemic thinker. Yeah, I can't think of anything unless it's end to end. So earlier we talked about design, but I want you to see, I don't see a life cycle. I see a cash to cash cycle, and it's really a cash to trash cycle. I'm in the business world, okay? You know, Walmart's not green. The $11 billion they saved in packaging had nothing to do with green. We heard our speaker right here talk about Walmart's not willing to fund them. They took that $11 billion and shoved it right in their pocket. Why are they sustainable? Why are they driving their suppliers to be sustainable? Because it drops to their bottom line. Sorry, you can say green all you want, but it's not that. It's about being effective and efficient, getting rid of waste, because it puts dollars on the bottom line. Until we start talking about bottom line, don't expect the world to move. Sorry, that's just how life is, because that's how we are. So what's my bias? This is my cash-to-cash cycle. And if you're a manufacturer, you're just a node on it. If you're a designer, you're a node on it. Okay? If you're an inventor, you're dreaming up something new, you're a node on it. If you're trying to deal with recycling, you're another node on it. So take away all of your biases about how you think, about your little segment of my cash-to-cash or life cycle. Okay? And put yourself on this and take your thumb and put it under your chin and push up. Because there's more. We heard talking today about the data around, but we missed geography. So what have we done in our lifetimes? Okay, over the last 100 years, we drive economies of scale. Everything's about economy of scale. In the 50s, 60s, 70s, that's all we heard. Economies of scale. Bigger, bigger, bigger. And then what happened? Information started in the 80s, and the accountants took over the world. It became economies of cost, based on economies of scale. How do I make it big and run it as cheap as possible? True or untrue? Tell me I'm wrong. Okay? So we got the information economy, 90s, early in the 2000s. What do we get? We just got economies of scale and economies of cost moving faster. But we didn't change them fundamentally. Okay? Then we got global economy. Oh, now we got it. The world is small. Okay? So we've outsourced and offshored. Why? Because we wanted lowest cost with economies of scale. So what's the problem here? Well, that isn't sustainable. Why is it that I have 5 full 747-400s, that's 5 truckloads of material, every day leaving China with laptops and PCs to be delivered in this country? Cheaper labor. Okay, cheaper labor to do what? You guys are building manufacturing processes to assemble things, to build things, to create things. Tell me that the outside case of this laptop is cheaper to build there and ship it here. When somebody with a molding machine could spit it out of a plastic extruder. Tell me that. Doesn't work, okay? 9/11 sent us the first big message of that. I have a big customer, had a concentrated manufacturing in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. They're single source global manufacturing. For 2 weeks they couldn't move goods when 9/11 happened. It doesn't work. But what do? Now they have a small plant in Czechoslovakia, they have one in Mexico, and they still run 80% of production out of Kuala Lumpur. So what did I do? I still have managed costs to a large scale, and it's still offshore. What's the next disruption we ran into on economies of scale? $100 US per barrel oil. For the first time in the history of transportation. Think about how old transportation is. In my industry, we always say it's the second oldest industry in the world. You all should know what the first one was. Okay? Fuel exceeded labor as a cost. Think about that. Fuel exceeded labor as a cost of transportation. Unbelievable. There was a lot of talk about China, rare earths and other things. Consider this for a minute. The next 5 to 10 years, greater than 70% of the production in China will be consumed in China. Where are our goods coming from? I don't know how many of you set up factories in China, but from 95 to 05, when you put a factory in China, for the first 4 years, you weren't allowed to run it over 40%. Why was that? So that the Chinese could learn how to operate it, run it, manage it, train their people. Then you got to scale up your production to 85% by 10 years. Why was that? They could learn, they can assimilate, they start to move it into their economy. Okay? Significant amounts of what's produced in China today is staying in China. How much bigger is their market than ours? 4 times. Okay? So though we've built them an infrastructure by investing in them, so what are we going to do next? Where do we have the next economy of scale with cheap labor? Where is it? South America, Africa, unstable, not a good legal process, isn't going to work. So what do we got to do? Now, let me stop for a second and say, what's the fundamental issue? Economies of scale, economies of scope, economies of cost have been built on one thing and one thing only: cheap and abundant fuel. Everybody builds things, they build it anywhere in the world, and they'll say to themselves, we can pay the freight for that. We can move the freight for that. And that's the wrong thinking. Okay? So one of the great economists of the history of the earth is a guy named Joseph Schumpeter, who created the term creative destruction. We have to creatively destruct economies of scale and economies of cost. Okay? So what do we have to do? Here's the trite statement: think global and act global. Well, our company happens to have done that since 1850. If you go to an agility office in Bangladesh, a Bangladeshi is running that office because he's the only one that knows how to clear customs formalities or anything else in that place. I can't send in an American or a Brit or a German and expect to know that. Okay? So what does it take us back to? Well, those of us that are old enough to remember the corner store. It's where you bought your milk and your vegetables and your meats. Canned goods, you could go to the big grocery store somewhere. Okay? Assemble at home. Starshine Academy, my friend, over here, Jack. You know, K through 12 school in a neighborhood. Take one particular problem with school systems today. How all of them are crunching for money. How can they afford, when fuel continues to go up and get harder, to bus kids around? I'm not trying to look at social impact here. I'm trying to look at what's the affordability and availability of bus transportation. Doesn't work, okay? The internet has made us close, and we have this global economy. But we keep forgetting about it's still thousands and thousands of miles to move things. So this is where we gotta go. One of these days I'd like to retire, so I'd like to stop re-engineering your engineering. Or what would really be best is, as you talked about a few minutes ago, getting involved in the design process. Invite me, logisticians, supply chain experts, into the design process at the beginning. So that I can tell you, no, don't produce this over here, because I can do a few other things with it. It's the plan for the last mile. Okay? Postponement. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the term postponement from a supply chain perspective. But if you're not, learn it. Pull out a cell phone. Everybody pull out your cell phone. Half of them are the same phone. Okay? They all got different covers on them. The guts are 99% the same thing. Why am I putting the cover on that cell phone in China and having to ship 1,000 of them and put them in inventory? Give me 200 of them and 500 different covers. And when you order it, I'll put it on. I postpone the final configuration until it's ready to move. Okay? This one's big. This is what fruit falling off the tree. 35 to 65% of the cargo inside of a truck is air. I didn't say the truck is not full. The trucks are full. Packaging. When's the last time you bought a flash drive that wasn't in a box that was about this big? Buy Windows 7. How big is the box? How small is the disk? And they don't put docks in them anymore because they want you to burn them yourself and spend your money. Believe me, that isn't green, folks. That's dollars on the bottom line. Okay? What we have to do, I know everybody likes to make fun of lawyers. I like to make fun of marketing people. Okay? I want to shoot all the marketing folks. Why? Why does everybody need the big box? So it displays on the shelf. How much time and space do we waste to take care of the marketing stuff? It's attitude, it's thinking. We gotta get rid of it. Because that's what's killing us. Okay? I could take out 50% of the trucks running on the interstate highways in the United States tomorrow if we re-engineered the packaging. Hello? 50% tomorrow. Okay? Design. KD configurations. How many people have bought stuff at IKEA? Bought stuff at IKEA. Why does IKEA do well? Because everything they build is KD. It's knocked down. Okay, you gotta assemble it yourself or pay somebody to assemble it. The world could be done that way. KD designs. Okay? Common items. Again, if I'm making something like a cell phone, how much of the structure, or a PC, how much of the structure is common? How many things inside of there are plug and play? The structure, the framework is common. A little guy on the street, micro manufacturer, with an aluminum stamping machine can make some of this stuff. With a polypropylene extrusion machine can make this stuff. And he could make it for all of Phoenix. So nothing that fit that category would have to be shipped here. Ship them the rest and assemble it. So instead of this economy of scale, build it all in one spot and ship it around the world, we need to design with postponement, micro manufacturing, distributed assembly and manufacturing, 80 configurations, taking common, simple items. I'm not talking about to build your Intel chip or your motherboard in every place on Earth. But the rail it sits on could be, because there's nothing special about it. Okay? And it makes it easy. Urgent transit. Cell phone towers. Did a project with Ericsson in Europe a number of years ago, and we developed the process. In fact, wrote a paper that Stanford actually published later about emergent transit. They bought 40% of the stuff that went to the tower from local content, wiring, connectors, etc. And I gathered it all up, and they shipped batteries from Mexico and stuff from Spain and things from Sweden. And 2 blocks from where that tower went up, I merged it together from the closest sources possible, so the fewest amount of total miles were used to create that tower. You can design that, my friends, because I make a living doing it. But it needs to be back in your software and back in your engineering design. So, if you think about it, what's your next project that you could postpone, change the packaging, work out the configuration, think of the geography of the supply chain, and act local? Do the final configuration in front of the customer. Why at the AT&T store do they not have 75 covers and they slap it on and screw it in right when they hand it to you? Why is that further up the supply chain? This is a waste of time, money, and transportation costs. And I'm sorry, it finally does get to carbon. As you can see, I'm not the greenest person in the world. I'm thinking about bottom line. I'm thinking about reducing waste in business. And that's going to get people's attention. Thank you.
I'm sure we've got some questions for Scott.
What are you the Indonesia story that you were talking about?
Okay, that's a good one.
Well, if they got 5 minutes?
Yes, you do.
Okay. I was at a gathering called the CSCMP. Anybody heard of the CSCMP? The Council of Supply Chain, no, I can't even say it. The management professionals, the council, they used to be called the CLM, the Council of Logistics Management. But logistics wasn't complex enough, so now they call it supply chain. Okay? And I was there speaking to 120 interns that were all trying to get graduate degrees in logistics. And they, in a forum about like this, they said, what's the most complex supply chain you ever designed? And I just looked at them for a couple of minutes, and I could just see, what piece of software did you use? What technology, RFID, what packaging, what kind of trucks, how did we air freight this stuff? How did this all work? Who did the assembly? And I said, the most interesting supply chain that I built in the last 10 years was in Indonesia, and it was for Nike. And the largest problem I had was there was a store 70 miles out in the middle of nowhere that sold a few shoes every week. Okay? And I had to find a way on Tuesday and Thursday every week to get an ox cart or a bicycle to take out my shoes and teach the guy how to text me back a delivery confirmation so that Nike in the Northwest could know that the shoes showed up in this little guy's open air shop. And the jaws dropped. They went, they had lost it. All the things they've been learning, talked about learning and thinking, all this great stuff to design these ultimate supply chains, forgot the ox cart. Because the last mile to the customer is where the revenue is generated. And until you generate the revenue, you haven't done business. Because there's only one thing that businesses are built to do. The purpose of business is one very small thing. It's called create cash. No more, no less. And if I can't get 2 shoes, 2 pair of shoes, buy ox cart twice a week. I don't create cash. That was one of the more complex supply chains I've had to build around the world in the last 10 years. And I've done this in 40 countries. So the infrastructures have all been widely divergent. Yes.
In your first slide, what was cash to cash? What does that mean?
From the time I began buying all these nasty materials that were listed out in your slide that ruin the world, to the time I collect the cash for the goods I sent to my customer. And nowadays in the EU, it's until I pay the final cash to get the waste taken care of properly. That's a cash-to-cash cycle.
What resources, what are the best resources out there on micro manufacturing?
That's a great question. And because it's completely, I don't make anything. So I really don't know. Probably somebody else in this room may know that. My job in life is to move everything. So we don't make a thing. We don't manufacture a thing except the knowledge to how to move things.
So that's a term they use manufacturing.
Well, it is. I've had it. I've worked with folks. I've worked with some other third-party logistics companies. In fact, I've done it some myself. We used to run something for IBM before they sold their computer business called the Options Program. You could order in Europe a PC. And so what I had to do is I had to burn Russian characters in the key, or Turkish, or Middle East Arabic. I'd have to put in a particular hard drive. I'd have to assemble something. In some cases I actually assembled, in some cases I actually manufactured. Okay? But it's a small, very flexible, I can change the line quickly, those kinds of things where I'm very agile. That's what we kind of started calling micro-manufacturing and micro-assembly. But it's really just the execution of postponement.
Would postponement work on a complicated product like an automobile, something like that?
They use it all the time.
Is it?
They use it all the time. The really guys out front know how to do that.
Do you have very many projects with supply chains that involve people all the way from one end of it out to consumption all the way back to ore in the ground, so to speak? Any of them that big?
Yes. All kinds of things like that. From mines through, you're talking about a vertically integrated process. And yes, we do that. You know, all the way from giving fertilizer to growers in Chile who grow grapes that come up here in the wintertime, chartering the ships, putting the refrigerated warehouses, marketing the process, and getting it delivered to the store to sell to the consumer with a minimum of 2 weeks of shelf life left. So yeah, we do those kinds of designs. In chemical manufacturing, I bring raw material out of the southern end of Africa. I bring it into Europe. It comes across to the States as a work in progress. Then it gets configured into, a lot of times, into some pharmaceuticals. And also a whip goes to Puerto Rico for fine manufacturing, flies back to the U.S. in order to be distributed to Walgreens. Now why? There's a lot of those things that don't need to go that way.
You want to remark on starting your office in Bangladesh, was it? In the conditions of employment,
Well, that actually was in Thailand. We did a distribution center for IBM, and we put in a small warehouse that was using RFID and RF technology in order to manage inventory inbound, outbound. And we looked in the local community, and there wasn't anybody there that could read or write. Now imagine trying to teach RF technology and inventory management to people that can't read or write. We hired 20 folks. This is a true story. Those 20 people learned how to operate those RF guns, wrote. But we hired them on the commitment that if they would do that, and they must stay for 2 years. We will educate them and get them a high school equivalency of education, and then pay for any additional education they wanted. That happened in 2002. In 2010, those 20 people all are college graduates.
That alone is.
Well, the line, I guess, that I gave Ken that woke him up the other day, and I'm sorry if I'm stealing your time, is that we do a lot of work in disasters all over the world. And, you know, Haiti's a good example of it. You know, when you think about what do people in Haiti need, and you say to yourself, how do I address a disaster? And you can think about, a lot of people think about what do they need? What do they need? What do they need? But we as supply chain people think about, how do they need it? Okay? Nobody thirsty in Haiti gets water unless somebody brings it to them. And my job is to figure out how to bring it to you. That's what we do in supply chain. And we bring lots of stuff. I have more charters going in and out of there than you can count right now. But that's what we do for a living. So, again, any other questions? Thank you very much. I apologize.